Okay, here's our second example on the trig identities. So let's grab, let's go with blue this time. So we've got the following. We have the cotangent of alpha plus the tangent of alpha. We need to show that that's equal to the secant of alpha times, let's erase that, I don't like that, times the cosecant of alpha. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the left side here. And the reason that I'm going to do that, you might say they both look fairly complicated, and they do. But usually multiplication is easier to show than to split something up and do addition or subtraction. So I'm going to go ahead and play around with this left side here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch everything to sine and cosine. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is get a common denominator so that I can combine these terms, because if you notice, I don't have any addition and subtraction over here on the right side, but on the left side I do. So I want to get rid of this addition here, and the way that I'm going to do that is combine the two fractions. So if you want to put two fractions together, you have to have a common denominator. So I'm going to multiply top and bottom of the one on the left by sine, and top and bottom of the one on the right by cosine. So let me write down what's going on here. I'm going to go like this. I'm going to multiply oops. Like that. So what's that going to give me? Well, let's come back down here. Okay, so I'm going to end up with cosine squared alpha over cosine alpha sine alpha plus sine squared alpha over cosine alpha sine alpha. Like that. Which is going to give me, well, I'll write it in the order that you see it here. I can switch the order here because addition's commutative, but we'll just rewrite it like this. So cosine squared alpha plus sine squared alpha all over cosine alpha sine alpha. Now when I see a sine squared and a cosine squared, I'm going to try to put them together, and I can here, because sine squared plus cosine squared using the Pythagorean identity is 1. So this is cosine alpha times sine alpha. Now the top can be split into 1 times 1 if I'd like to. So that's going to be 1 over the cosine alpha times 1 over the sine of alpha. Just like that. I can split those things up. Okay, so just think about if you worked backward. Okay, so if I went back in this direction and I multiply those two fractions, you'd multiply top by top and bottom by bottom. 1 over cosine is secant, and 1 over sine is cosecant. And I've now arrived at what I was trying to get. So the technique that I used in this one was to move everything into sine and cosine, and then get a common denominator, which I did right up here. So here's my common denominator, and then combine. Okay, and then over here was to simplify, and I knew that I needed to get secant and cosecant, so once I had cosine and sine on the bottom, it was easy to move them up top.